let her rip.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us today for this webinar. I think we had 17 countries register for this event. Obviously, it's being recorded, so people can sort of watch it later. Really happy it's 17 countries because that's what the IRT is all about. It's all about bringing everyone together when it comes to auto recycling, and including everyone from cradle to grave. Yeah, and this is great. We've got so many people being represented from the different sectors, so it's really encouraging to see that the IRT is starting to be recognised as we start to build it up. We do want to keep on doing these webinars, and so Steve and I will try to sort of do one monthly or every 2 months. If you have any suggestions for the topics you'd like to see covered, just get in touch with either myself at Auto Recycling World or Steve directly, or you can put something in the chat box here today as you're thinking about stuff, and that just helps Steve and I sort of decide what we can do, who we can approach, and how we can get these webinars becoming more regular. So that's great. As the IRT is growing, and it is growing, we think we should just let you know to put some dates in your diary for next year. I only had the conversation today with, to finalise some things. So the 3rd to 6th of June, 2025, we're going to be having an IRT Auto Recycling World joint conference in Liverpool. So put those dates down. Obviously, we've only just finalised those dates today. We'll be pushing out the web pages pretty soon when people know more about it, and if you have any ideas or if you'd like to speak or anything like that, it's right at the beginning. Please again get in touch, and you know, we can have a chat with you to sort of talk about the subjects and stuff like that. The IRT is for you guys, so we want to listen to what you want to do with this forum, so that we can sort of start to exchange ideas, learn about what people are doing in different countries and within their respective companies. So that would be great. So today we've got, we're talking about sustainability. We've got Tom Rumboll, who's the CEO of SYNETIQ, which is an IAA company. Tom's there in the UK. So thanks very much for doing this webinar today. And we've also got Steve Fletcher from ARC, or ARC, which is the Auto Recyclers of Canada. So that's, again, thanks, Steve. Steve is part of the IRT. He's sort of spearheading it as well, so that's great. The format which we'll do is, I think we'll ask Tom to speak first and then Steve. If we can sort of hold our questions to after both people have spoken, that'll be great. And also what we'd like to do is if you can put the questions in the chat box, and then we can sort of see what's rising to the top and the topics we do, and then I'll ask the questions straight to Tom and Steve for them to answer. So please feel free to sort of put in your questions in the chat box, and just remember suggestions for future topics. That'll be great. So Steve, it's up to you to press the buttons for Tom and to share screens.
Yeah, it should be, you should be able to share your screen now, Tom.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you, Steve. That good?
Yep, looking good with me.
Fantastic. Is it in full screen mode? So I'll can you all hear me okay? If you could just stick a thumbs up in the
Yep,
react.
yeah, we're good.
Sweet, amazing, thank you. Check the time, just after 6 minutes past. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the intro, Haydn. For those people that have either got up really early or stayed up really late, I will try and provide decent value and some good energy about what we're going to talk about. So by way of introduction, I'm Tom. I'm the CEO of a company called SYNETIQ. SYNETIQ is a UK-based business, part of IAA company, IAA based in the US with a dominant profile in Canada, part of RB Global, in the US business that has got a global reach. And because our business is so market specific in terms of the UK, I'm not diving too deeply into the business model, but there'll be enough time to talk about that at the end, or Q&A or follow-up if you need it. What I wanted to do and agreed with Haydn, which I thought would be useful, is talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, how we do it, but really importantly, why we do it, and how we've developed our own sustainability agenda and how that's helped us succeed in our industry. So if that's okay, I'll get into who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. So who are we? SYNETIQ. I won't be the guy that reads the slides, but we are an integrated salvage and dismantling business. Basically, it means we take cars and sell the cars on our proprietary online salvage auction developed in-house, and where those cars aren't safe to be returned to the road, we harvest as many parts from those cars as we possibly can through our in-house dismantling team. That whole function is about 260 colleagues. The remainder are in central services, about 120, and the balance in salvage and operations and transport. So we run our own transport collection fleet. So very much an end-to-end process. So when we partner with our insurance clients, who account for about 70% of our volume, they can trust that it is SYNETIQ people dealing with their claim, dealing with the collection, dealing with the policyholder, dealing with the checking in and receipting that vehicle, dealing with the assessment of that vehicle, deciding which route it goes down, and ultimately following that all the way through right until harvesting as many parts and recycling as much as that car as possible. I'll touch on that more in a second. Just as a quick bit of preamble, SYNETIQ, the name, it comes from two words, synergy and kinetic, and synergy being great in the sum of its parts, and kinetic involving or producing movement and momentum. I think it's two important things just to just touch on that there. The business was formed in 2019 through a four-way merger, so the concept of synergy was incredibly relevant. Subsequently, as being bought by IEA, the SYNETIQ business merged with IEA's UK business. So we've had another opportunity for synergy from 2023. So we've been really working hard to take the best of all the different models that is now SYNETIQ, whether that be systems, people, processes, property, technology, all that kind of stuff. And then kinetic very much speaks to the vision of SYNETIQ, which was and is still to create a vehicle recycling industry we can all be proud of. And that speaks to our commitment to innovation, to compliance, to technology development, to integrity, to security, data, GDPR, compliance, environmental, etc., and sustainability. So to lead the industry in these really, really important areas. So this probably does justice to a bit of context I've just shared. So big dismantling, warehousing, parts operations, big scale salvage, and lorries trunking parts overnight for faster delivery, and some really, really dedicated, fantastic, inspirational people doing this on a daily basis. So I've touched on the model. There's broadly four quadrants, but in this, reuse, remanufacture, recycle. So touched on the salvage auction, that's proprietary, developed by our in-house IT team. Of our 100,000 vehicles that we take a year, about 68% of those are sold as salvage vehicles. The very cool thing that we're able to do, which we perceive drives enhanced salvage values, is if you're bidding on our auction and you're bidding for a car, we will be scraping data internally from our ERP system and giving you a list of all the parts we hold in stock for that car. And we perceive that really helps drive enhanced value, because clearly our buyers know that they can get a proportion of the parts they need to fix that car from us in real time at typically half the cost. So that's the salvage business, be familiar to most. Dismantling business, pretty straightforward in concept. Dangerous vehicles, i.e. category Bs, as we would know it in our UK parlance, aren't safe to return to the road. Our job, using data, sales channels, know-how, expertise, long-standing trading relationships in UK and in export markets, to harvest as many reusable parts from that vehicle as possible. The slight bit of added value is through our remanufacturing business. So it's called SYNETIQ Mechanical Solutions. It used to be called Motorman. So I bought that business on behalf of SYNETIQ in 2019, and they do major units, so engines and gearboxes for critical fleets. And this is a real good piece of added value, where we take either a used or a remanufactured engine and get that back into a car. Normally, because it'd be prohibitively expensive to go to a main dealer, it's to avoid total loss, or it's where, and again, very much a UK phenomenon, with the spike in used car prices post-COVID, the insurance payout wasn't enough for the policyholder to get an equivalent vehicle. And that left the insurer with a very, very unhappy policyholder, and a policyholder that was pretty unhappy with their insurer. Through our remanufactured engine offering via SMS, what we're able to do actually is often keep policyholders in their car, because some of these major units would tip that car into a total loss but through our intervention, it doesn't. And then when we get to the end of this process, so as I mentioned, 100,000 vehicles, 68,000 or so are sold, that leaves 32,000. We recycle those vehicles. Some go straight to our recycling process. Some we've harvested the parts over a 6, 12, 18, 24-month period before we get there. But really proud to say we recycle our vehicles to 96.4%, which is UK industry leading. So we separate alloys, we separate copper, we separate catalytic converters, steel wheels, and we process a lot of those, or some of those things on site. But at the very least, we do separate those such that we've got the highest recycling rate in the market. A quick bit about why we're focused on sustainability. I suppose it speaks to our vision to lead the industry to a future we can all be proud of. But also it came as a result of genuine, proper strategic planning. And this is not self-aggrandizement. This is just reality. So we had a strategy that was formed of our vision, our mission, our purpose, and it was set in the context of the industry, the competition, potential collaborators, what our clients, our big insurance companies were interested in, and what our current capabilities and our near-term capabilities could have been, and ultimately what we perceive as the right thing to do. So the focus on sustainability came genuinely from the top. It came as the result of a strategy to be the most sustainable business, and understanding and seeing what the landscape of our industry and our major clients. So if I think about the UK industry, there was a thing called COP26 in Glasgow, really opened everyone's eyes to the need for urgent climate action, such that there's now, I think, just under 9,000 businesses globally signed up for something called the Science Based Targets Initiative. Some of you might be familiar with that, but it's where you measure your emissions on scope 1, 2, and 3. To touch on that in the questions if we need to. So what's my point? 2 or 3 years ago, there's only 3,000 businesses signed up for that globally. $30 trillion going into ESG, sustainably invested in 2022. That'll be 40 trillion by 2030. So there's massive investor pressure, big consumer pressure and sentiment around the people that serve us and provide our goods and services being more sustainable. So we wanted to be part of that change. And that has been an incredibly powerful force for our business, not in just in terms of reputation and profile, i.e. how well we're known, what we're known for, but also in winning new clients. So what do we call it? We call it our road to tomorrow. I didn't, because I'm not that talented, but we've got a fantastic bunch of people in SYNETIQ that work really hard to make our business look brilliant and make me look better than I have any right to be. I just have the privilege of talking about the hard work that our 650 colleagues get to do. So our sustainability journey, our journey to become the most sustainable, responsible business in our place, we coined the road to tomorrow. Again, I won't read every bit on the slide, but it's fair to say data is super important in that starting point, because to know where you want to get to, you first need to know where you're starting from. So granular data measurement, where are our emissions, how are they created, and then let's understand where we are as a benchmark. Then it's about colleague engagement. We've done some fantastic things around engaging our colleagues through something called the Carbon Literacy Project. So if you don't remember anything from this 15-20-minute ramble, just remember carbon literacy, please, because it'll be the most impactful thing that I say this morning or this evening or today for you guys. Carbon Literacy Project. Fantastic, game-changing colleague engagement tool. We didn't have too much technical in-house expertise. We now have that because we've learned from professionals, but we engaged the right professionals to do that. And I think in doing so, we have challenged some of those old industry perceptions. And genuinely, if you think about our output and how well we're known and what we're known for, we'll be talking about collaboration, we'll be talking about batteries, we'll be talking about magnets in EV motors, we'll be talking about market-leading recycling rates, we'll be talking about carbon measurement, we'll be talking about embedded carbon and carbon footprint. None of those you would necessarily think would be what a more old-school salvage business would talk about, but it's very much our language, and it's very much the language of our clients. How we got started, because every journey starts with the first step and those cliches, and you'll go up the top of the mountain and think, gee, how are we going to get there? Crikey. But actually you just have to start. And this is what we did. This is how we got started. We didn't pick everything to focus on. We picked 4 things to focus on. And first of all, it was continue what we already do well, but let's just make sure the measurement and the efficacy and the validity of that measurement is there. So meeting our minimum recycling targets, no brainer. It's our license to operate. But let's wrap that up into a broader sustainability journey. We've now trained, I'm proud to say, more than 50% of our colleagues are on the carbon literacy. And carbon literacy is about any other form of literacy, financial literacy, literacy in general. It is understanding the causes and effects of CO2. And then as a result of the understanding the causes and effects, it's then giving strategies and techniques and tools and thought processes, behavioral nudges as to how we can reduce those both at home and at work. So I'm proud to say we've got an army of carbon literate colleagues that are all doing their bit each day at work and at home to reduce their CO2 impact. Normally, when you're reducing CO2, you're reducing cost, you're definitely reducing energy, and those two normally go hand in hand. You're normally reducing time, so it's created some real business efficiencies as well. So we invested in our people, and hearts and minds, and sustainability training. And then we put a lot of time and effort and quite a bit of money into understanding embedded CO2 savings of every one of our green parts that we sell. So you've heard of green parts, green hydrogen, green wash, green steel. Genuinely, we have measured the carbon savings. We've mapped every single one of our processes, including how our machines in our buildings operate and what power supply, solar in most cases, I'm pleased to say. And we can say with real clarity and efficacy, a door bought from SYNETIQ, a green part, a green door, will have 54% less carbon in it than its newly manufactured equivalent. An engine will have 93% less CO2 and a wing mirror 17. We can say that, and that has been very, very powerful in driving the sale of green parts, but also the consideration of our business by major insurers, most of which have signed up for science-based targets where they need to map their downstream, i.e. their supply chains, CO2 emissions. So for us to be able to do that, plug into their supply chain brilliantly. And then we've committed to net zero. A long journey. We have a fleet of over 100 vehicle collection trucks that run on diesel at 8 miles per gallon. The technology isn't sufficient for us to do anything other than that at the moment, but we have to find other opportunities, the low-hanging fruit, if you like, the quick wins. But we have made that commitment. We don't know how we're going to get there because the technology doesn't exist for some of the things we need, but we've got the will and we've got the skill, and we just need to do the things we can do with the technology that's available today to do that. But we've made the commitment, and that has proved important as a recruitment strategy for both clients and colleagues, and a retention strategy for clients and colleagues. Starting point, understand our emissions. I've touched on this before. So you've got scope 1, so it's your direct emissions. So this is, we can read it, fuel, heating, lights, gases. Scope 2, indirect. So this is our from third parties, and then scope 3 is downstream, so it's our supply partners. So we're a scope 3 emission to a major insurer who are now having to measure that. So the better we are at this, the easier it is for them. There's also the things above are the different greenhouse gases, by the way, in case you're wondering. So nitrous, CO2, nitrogen, PFCs, etc. I won't get too detailed in this. We can pick that up in the questions if anyone's got any more detail. But basically, it was about starting with that understanding. We need to know where our emissions are coming from. And we've done that, because then we can start tackling the biggest. We've done more things on our road to tomorrow. We've got 7 work streams. I won't talk through all of them, but it's fair to say that it's just part of who we are, what we do, why we do what we do. It's part of our purpose, part of our culture, it's part of our why. And you can see it in the different work streams. We want to reduce the CO2 of our transport because it's our biggest area of emissions. We want to run a lower carbon estate, so LED lighting, solar panels, electric vehicles, where possible, charged by solar. That feeds into workstream 3, renewable energy. Workstream 4, circularity and waste. It speaks to maximising recycling. It seeks to maximise part sales using data, technology, sales channels. It also speaks to things like composting and food waste that we collect at our sites, recycling packaging, cardboard, and minimise paper, paperless processes, and so on. Culture is all about behavioural change, carbon literacy training, giving people confidence, tools, skills, understanding, causes and effects of CO2 and what they can do to change it in their personal lives and their work lives, where we need to offsetting and there's a license to operate piece, 0.7, very much around staying compliant, but basically needing those compliance certificates. What you'll see at the end, at the bottom, really, is all sorts of good stuff we do. On the bottom right, it's a really interesting one, the sustainability certificate we give to our clients. You can see some real world extrapolations in terms of this is how much, say, one of our clients, CO2 they have saved, how that equates to barrels of oil, or how many mobile phones that can power, or how many houses. That has been really, really powerful, and that has encouraged our clients to push their repair partners to buy more green parts from SYNETIQ. And in doing that, they're saving not just 50%, but typically 50% carbon as well as 50% cost. I'll pick up on more of these things if there's more other questions, but that gives you a good flavour for the whole spectrum of activity that we undertake. 2024, a focus. I won't go through all of these, but you'll see a nice electric combi lift there, which is probably one of the first of its kind in our market. Very, very big on trying to reduce CO2 when and where we can, but it has to fit with business priorities, CapEx budgets, and all the rest of it. So we're trying HVO. So that's the vegetable oil diesel replacement, so 90% less CO2, but currently it's hugely more expensive. So that's a trial to see how we get on with that. And hopefully as we go through this trial, that gets manufactured at bigger scale and the cost comes down as the demand goes up. Very, very big on, as I mentioned, trying to decarbonize that fleet. So it's HVO, but it's also mileage. So we invested in a new planning system that we think will save about 15 to 20% emissions as well as time and cost. We're reporting on the savings of parts and auction vehicles. We're very, very big into battery partnerships. There's a slide on that in a sec. And then, as you can see in our sites, we've got an LED lighting transition. We've installed EV chargers, cycle to work, car sharing, and electric delivery vehicles for us. I like this slide a lot, and I could talk about it all day, but I won't, because I've probably used almost my allotted time. But we've really, really wanted to lead, and if you're going to lead on sustainability within the industry, but the next leadership opportunities, we perceived it, even back in 2019, was EV batteries. We are preparing and have been preparing for an electrified future in SYNETIQ since 2019. So we've developed a series of podcasts with an insurer, with a repairer, with an NGO, with a battery reuser, with a fleet and a battery recycler, to talk about all the challenges that sit in those small ecosystems themselves, and how we and them together can maximize the economic and environmental value of every vehicle, specifically EV vehicle that we receive. And it points to this infographic at the bottom, really, in terms of the expanded role of the vehicle recycler. And I'll touch on that in a bit more detail if I get time, because I think there's a bigger role and a really important role that we can play as part of the circular economy. And I think truly linear business models are dead. We have to create circular models, and certainly vehicle recycling has been circular forever, but we have to have the counterparties and the collaborators around to make it truly circular. And the next big opportunity after batteries will be EV motors. I think the stat, and I think we've got experts on the call, but I think only 3% of permanent magnetic material globally, 3% is recycled, because to this point it's been very difficult to get that permanent magnetic material out of the more modest metal, shall we say, the ions and so on. But through some very smart chemical refining, there is now an ability to get those permanent magnetic materials out and be part of the urban mine. So rather than digging virgin material out of the ground, we can use the products that are in use today to make the next series of products that are in use today. EV partnerships, super proud of this. It's probably a piece in itself. We have for our principle: retail, repair, reuse, recycle. We've got battery testing equipment, so the first in our industry in the UK to have that. So where that battery is good, we will retail that. Where it's not, we'll partner. We've got some fantastic collaborations with an OE and an approved repairer and ourselves to make a triangle for an approved battery program. So with the core engine program, we are now part of a core battery program with the OE's blessing to fulfill their warranty claims. Very, very, very exciting. So that's a repair opportunity. We're doing the same with another repairer for a different set of OEs. Then we're partnering with a reuser. So they use BESS create the best systems, battery energy storage systems. So batteries that are not fit for retail repair will go into this second energy storage. And then we're also partnering with that's with Ally, with a fantastic business called Altillium, who recycle, and their recycling process has got 76% lower carbon footprint than other battery recycling processes. And they partner with a business called ASC, who are battery manufacturer, ASC, Envision, and so they have part of the circle, and we're partnering with them, or the loop, to close that loop. So where we can, we're using the battery as a battery for a car. Where we can't, we're repairing it to create a battery for a car. Where we can't do that, we're using it in energy storage. When we can't do that, we're recycling that to create new batteries. And all of that speaks to our mission. Our vision, remember, is to lead the industry. Our mission is to maximize the economic and environmental value of every vehicle. And by partnering with the right people at the right parts of the value chain, we're able to do that. In our view, return the best financial return back to our clients in the lowest carbon way. Very briefly, I won't labour on this slide. Getting started with the sustainability strategy, the word there, I suppose, is commit. Just commit to it. The rest will come, and don't beat yourself up if you don't make the speed of progress that you'd like. But if you commit and start with the measurement of where you are and make sure you're compliant, and then look at the 3 or 4 easy things you can do those. And the other thing is, genuinely, what I've found, it's a bit like when you become a new parent. There's just this community out there that care about making a difference. And if you ask for help, you'll get it, because there's an amazing group of people in this world on all different continents that really want to help and that really care. And if they see and hear and understand another business that wants to do their bit, there is no shortage of opportunity, no shortage of generosity, of insight, expertise, spirit, signposting, resources to help all of us do better and be better, not just for our planet, but for our clients, colleagues, and customers as well. So I would just say, commit to doing it. Find the things you can do, and then reach out whenever you get stuck, because there'll be a whole heap of enthusiasm and support for you to become a more sustainable business. I think that it's not a question now. I've lost everyone's vision, so I'm working on one screen. So I hope you stayed with me. I hope that ran broadly to time and was relevant. And I'll pipe down and hand over to Steve, ready for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. That was really good, very encouraging. It's great to sort of see the story. I've been following SYNETIQ since they were formed, and just seeing the commitment to sustainability, and the sort of the different incentives that you've brought in, and we just know it's not going to finish. So SYNETIQ are very much a company to be sort of keeping an eye on, at the forefront of, just not as a vehicle recycling business, but also just when it comes to sustainability itself. Just very quickly, you mentioned the Carbon Literacy Project, so I put a link on that in the chat box for everybody. So if you just want to sort of click on that quick and bookmark it, but obviously come back to this page as quickly as possible for Steve, that will be great. I did notice that you mentioned your podcast, Let's Talk EV. I'll put a link on for that. I think it's a series of 5 podcasts. Is it 5 or 6?
6, expertly hosted by a guy called Haydn Davies.
No. It's not about the host. It's about the content that was in that. Speaking to those partners that you're talking about, and again, showing how people want to work together. So I'll put that link on a bit later, and I really encourage everyone to sort of spend some time to look at the podcast, or just put it on in your car, which could be a lot better because you don't have to look at me, and do that. Thanks, Tom. That's great. We'll come back to questions a bit later, so still be around a bit later. That would be great. And now we're going to look how keen Steve is. He's ready to go. Okay, then, Steve, it's up to you then. I'll leave it in your capable hands.
Thank you. And that was awesome, Tom. I really, I took a whole page worth of notes, but I've been following SYNETIQ and Tom for quite some time now. I'm going to talk more at the industry level, sort of things that the National Association in Canada have been doing, not as strategically organized as Tom's efforts, but also has been spanning probably 12 years since we got into the area. just quick background, ARC's the national association here in Canada, works through 7 provincial associations, 350 working auto recyclers, involved in just exchanging information between provinces, working on some national programs, and then interacting nationally and now more internationally on different things that relate to auto recycling. Just by way of, and I think Tom covered a lot of this, but just so we understand what sustainability is, and it's really it's social, economic, and environmental, and just like, how do you do things now that the future is going to be what we all want it to be. For the most part, we focus on the environmental side of things because that's really what auto recycling, how we differentiate ourselves. There are social and economic aspects to sustainability, which get picked up into it all, but our focus has definitely been environmental. And it's not just GHGs, but it's managing pollution, waste, resource recovery, conserving natural resources like water, biodiversity. But we as auto recyclers focus on what we can do. There are a lot of related terms, ESG reporting, which is sort of a more formal, how do you tell people what you're doing from an official perspective, net zero, the circular economy. These are all terms that interlink and something that we've been involved in, but I'm going to focus on the environmental side of sustainability. CAREC is the Canadian Auto Recyclers Environmental Code. So this relates to pollution prevention, kind of waste management at the operational level, where in Tom's world in the UK, there are specific regulatory requirements coming out of the EU implemented by each of the countries on what you should be doing. Canada doesn't really have that sort of regulatory framework for what happens. So we developed CAREC with Environment Canada back in about 2010. And it's a third-party audit of the operations of an auto recycler broken down into admin, receiving, and various components to it all. And it's a scoring system that a third-party auditor goes in and visits the auto recyclers, passes 75%, which we've been well over that for quite a long time. Now the average score on a national basis is up to 88%. Some of the provinces are averaging 92%. So it's that continuous and kind of what Tom was alluding to. If you measure it, you can manage it. As people were getting feedback on their environmental performance and having plans on where to fill gaps, scores improve. We do publicly report platinum, gold, silver, bronze in the various categories of scoring, internal motivation, as well as just responding to the public. And it's now become mandatory for all of our members. So every one of our members for the last 10, 11 years has been audited against the CAREC standard. Been marvelous for defining who we are, what we do, what good auto recycling looks like, and has led to some regulatory activity at the provincial level. But it's one of those sustainability things that if you're not operationally clean, if you will, the parts you generate, the management of the vehicles is all for naught. So it's kind of one of the baselines that we've really focused on. There's an example of the CAREC website. So at the end of this presentation, I've got the links to things that I think you might be interested in, but CAREC is a public document. You can download the standards, download the scoring. It's part of our education of members, the overall industry, and then anybody who wants to take a look at it. So again, governments, media, OEMs, insurers are all, we want them to be aware that CAREC exists. One of the other projects that we developed, again, about 10 years ago, was to try to tell people a bit of the environmental story in a more organized fashion. And the whole green parts branding, which is now somewhat of a global phenomena, came out of Ontario, came out of actually Quebec, one of our provinces. We put an entire branding program around it, trying to explain what auto recycling is to policyholders, consumers, and push the information right down to the member level so that they were had these tools available to them for their websites, for their advertising. It was very much a multimedia approach to try to explain what our industry is all about. One of the more recent projects that we did back in 2023 was moving beyond just sort of us telling a story about what our recycling is to actually measuring the environmental benefits. As we got more engaged with insurance companies who needed to understand what recycled parts did for them in that Scope 3 ESG reporting, we undertook a study with Oakdean, who also had worked with SYNETIQ and some other insurers in Europe, and came up with a document that outlined the environmental benefits, mainly pushing towards those GHG savings that Tom had discussed, but also kind of reintroducing CAREC, reintroducing sort of how the industry operates. So again, that they feel comfortable that the parts that we have and can put into their supply chains are generated sustainably. So the report, which is a public document, we've shared with many people, kind of walk through, what are those GHG savings attributed to? We worked off of 13 parts, kind of taking the most common parts that we sell. So not necessarily just for insurers, because some of the biggest savings happen on the mechanical parts, engines, drivetrains, and generated a very user-friendly approach to what the data that we can now put behind some of these products. So kind of again went through those 13 parts and started to generate CO2 equivalent savings for Ontario. We focused only on the Ontario market because there's different energy profile across Canada. Quebec is like 97% green in terms of their electricity generation, where Alberta where is much more natural gas, has a much larger CO2 footprint. Ontario, we can manage it, and ended up generating a document that has been widely circulated and begun to be used by others within the ecosystem to kind of grab onto some of those benefits that we'd been talking about, but now we could actually show. And it wasn't us talking about it. It was a third-party research agency generating the information. That report led to a very important stakeholder meeting that we held earlier this year. So the Ontario Association runs a big conference, which essentially acts as a national conference. This whole subject area was just too large of something to talk about. So we had a pre-event meeting the afternoon of the 21st. And we ended up having about 130 people in the room, and 42 recyclers, 13 insurers, 20 repairers, and a pile of service providers that we held essentially a sustainability roundtable. Had ourselves talking about, again, what we do, what we generate, use the report as a base to it all. We had repairers who are very sustainability focused, talking about their sustainability paths and how recycled parts kind of fits into that. And we had Intact Insurance, which is the largest insurance company in Canada, on stage with us talking about their sustainability plans. So it was no longer us talking about how great we were, what role we could play, but we had those insurance people who are driving a lot of the interest, and the repair people who definitely want to interact with the insurers in the audience and kind of talking about what we do and sort of putting us back into that dialogue. And that report really generated that activity. So something that we're looking to, okay, what happens next? The report itself generated a lot of other research opportunities. And I believe that we're going to go down the path of using those researchers, those academics, those collaborators, that it's not just our little voice talking about sustainability coming from our industry, but utilizing sort of the larger systems. Some of the activity that the report, the roundtable, the kind of culmination of Carrick, the Green Parts branding has brought us to. We generated a series of articles on ESG, net zero, and sustainability targeted to auto recyclers, trying to educate our constituency on what these things are, why they should pay attention to them, why they should understand the language of it all. So Tom's, carbon literacy project, we sort of back-ended it, but something that we need to look into to make sure that we're talking the same language, because more and more of the people that we want to deal with are utilizing it, and just they need to do things, and they're coming to us now for some role that we can play. So we've had at least 5 direct meetings with insurers following the roundtable, kind of talking about where are you in your sustainability journey? Are you in the direct parts procurement place, and whatever systems that you're using, help us understand what that is and how we can better educate our members, better educate the systems themselves on what's happening. So again, in Intact, not only was part of the roundtable, but the next couple of days they were at our convention. It's sort of the 3rd convention in a row now that they've been there, either speaking or in the audience or interacting with us. And Intact traveled all the way out to Atlantic Canada, to Prince Edward Island, our smallest province, just to interact directly with the industry. So we think that's a really powerful message, that they're taking this seriously, they see us as a partner, and we collectively want to understand one another. Aviva Canada held a net zero supplier summit, again, very publicly talking about their net zero commitments and how within that scope 3, the suppliers need to collaborate and partner. Carpart, who is on this call, took some of the data, or took basically all the data that came out of our report, and are beginning to integrate some of those CO2e savings into their iPro analytics in their parts procurement activity. So we've had a couple of interactions with them just about, what's next, where can we utilize more data to get data into some of those decision makers, and just help participate in the communication about what the importance of this is and what role that we can play. Solera and Autotex has generated a Green Lane white paper. It's mainly European focused, but it's sort of how some of their software and activities can help insurers and repairers meet some of their sustainability goals. And recently, within the last 3 weeks, I believe, Simplicity, who is a repair chain in Canada, and they were one of the speakers at our roundtable, and very involved in sustainability, partnered with Solera to hold a sustainability conference, bringing together all the stakeholders. And at that meeting, they announced the formation of an Automotive Sustainability Council of Canada. So directly working as collaborators, as partners, to help one another figure out where things are. So that's the kind of path that we've been on as a national association that works through provincial associations, that ultimately works through working hands-on auto recyclers. We've been creating resources, creating information, and kind of getting it outside of the industry into insurers and repairers and governments and OEMs, but at the same time trying to give these tools to working auto recyclers that they can begin to incorporate into their businesses and business practices. So there's a sort of an overview of some of the reports, how to access them. We're recording the webinar, so it's going to show up in the actual recording, but I'm going to push out the deck itself if you want to kind of jump to some of those things. So hopefully through the combination of Tom's presentation and my presentation, you've seen a large, very organized company approaching sustainability, deploying sustainability right to the very DNA of the company, versus our approach, which has been more at the industry level and pushing it down to small businesses. You know, we don't profess to say, hey, the way we did it and are doing it is the right way. Everyone's going to have their different operating environment. But that's really where it comes back to what the IRT is meant to do, meant to profile different countries or different companies' activities in areas that are of interest in some capacity to others. And how do we kind of convey that information? And it's what the webinars that Haydn and I are kind of working on. And ultimately what we hope to the physical meeting is going to be all about when we get together in Liverpool next year. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully that puts us back into Haydn's hands. And I see there's some questions that I don't know how you want to handle it, Haydn, but
No,
I'll
thanks,
send
Steve.
control back to you.
No, Steve, that was great. That's really good, and it's so good to sort of see the focus on sustainability and the hard work that's going into this, and getting out there and talking to other industries in our sector to sort of show the role that we play. And I know this isn't just in the UK and Canada. I know there's many people in different countries doing a lot of good work out there. And I think, you know, we came up with a title, you know, vehicle recycling sustainable by default and leading the charge. And I think just from those two conversations, it does show that how we are doing our best as an industry to be getting out there, taking that responsibility and offering solutions and you know, and the results as well. So it's really good. Yeah, so let's do some questions. And also another thing is that, Steve, and I know again with Tom, you know, you are talking to the insurance companies and all these people, so it's really, really good. So let's start with some questions. Please carry on sending them in as you think of them. It's always good. I always like a webinar when people are asking questions. It shows that the topic is on point. People are listening. They are asking more questions. So it's really encouraging that, you know, and it's all for everyone to be involved in the IRT. So over the years or over the coming months, we'll hopefully have more and more people speaking at these events. So this is great. Just going straight to the top, and this was more for Tom, you know, just for a bit of a specific here. You know, you talked about the 96% recycling rate. Yashodun, I think I've got the name right. I do apologize for how I pronounce names, but with a name like Haydn, I'm used to Haydn, you know, so I do apologize. But anyway, getting back to that 96%, Tom, where does the other 4% go in you know, where does it go, that 4%?
Yeah, so no, it doesn't go to landfill. So we know where it doesn't go. But it goes to EMR, Sims, Wards, Norton's shredding companies as part of the scrap bale, and then that gets separated out. So plastics go to make new plastics, polymers, fluff, seats. There's all sorts. Tires go to rubber crumb and all that good stuff. So from our perspective, we're really happy that on our downstream we've got partners for tires, wheels, engines, alloys, oil, all the fluids and the stuff that, you know, it's valuable to somebody. So we work with a business called Slicker Recycling, who just keep winning awards for all things like used rags and interiors. So interior stuff gets processed, but that gets processed downstream by our partners. I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to give too much to every question, because we want to try and get...
Just as a quick answer, I think that's brilliant. You know, that 4% is still being recycled in some respect, and you know,
just not bales, it just goes out.
Yeah, and just I ask a question. Oh, sorry, Steve. Yeah, please.
No, I just wanted to ask Tom if he's figured out how to sell the honk on a car yet and the arrow to the tires. So and that's typical auto recyclers. They look at a car and they just figure out where's the value proposition in this thing.
Yeah, you can imagine the minds in the back sort of just taking over and just doing it. Maybe a question for both of you. I know this was asked this is from Bethany when Tom was speaking. You know, but how, you know, you're both working with Oak Dean in different ways. But how can one determine the CO2 savings per recycled part type and compare it to a new aftermarket? So, how are you doing that? Let's ask Steve for this question first, and see if Tom wants to jump in.
Yeah, well, we we picked 13 parts based on sort of priority usage, and we laid that against. So we used Oakdean Hollins, who's a consultancy out of the UK, who did work with SYNETIQ, did work with Allianz that we're aware of, and others, and it was just sort of mapping, almost the process that Tom outlined that the company is doing in terms of where are the embedded carbon emissions in things. And so all of our comparisons were new versus recycled. We didn't do aftermarket, which is, it's going to have a potentially different footprint. And I know there's Allianz did a study on repair versus replace, and whenever you can repair a part, it's always better than replacing. But that analysis was done on replacing it against a new part, and now we know, intuitively know that a recycled part has less embedded carbon in it than a brand new part that has to replace it all. But ours was a very fast study. We utilized existing data that's out there. I know the US is also working on their second study, doing actual physical breakdowns of 15 parts, weighing them, doing metal, what sort of material recoveries are. But it's just that differential between new and whatever processes you need to establish a recycled part.
Okay, thanks, Steve. You want to add a little bit more to that, Tom?
Only that it's a very similar methodology. So there's widely available published data on the embedded carbon of OE manufactured parts. So we got a hold of a data set through with Haydn Hollins that is available. But then what we had to do was have those guys on site with us, stepping through every single one of our processes, how we collect the vehicle, what engines are in the collection trucks, how many movements on a forklift truck to do all the things that we do, what those forklift trucks are powered by, were they electric and solar, or were they on diesel or LPG, how those parts are then picked, packed, wrapped, dispatched, including the materials to do that with, how are they then delivered, is it an electric delivery van, is it a diesel delivery van, etc. And what we managed to do, to exactly Steve's point, was we had to build that up granular from our business, but set that against published data from OE. But I suppose the interesting bit on our side is, only bit of nuance is, we did that for a broad range of parts, but also for different vehicle types. So SUV, mid-sized car, small vehicle, because we know there was a big difference in the embedded CO2 depending on the type of vehicle. For one, you can only get 3 light commercial vehicles on a truck, where we can get 8 small vehicles on the collection truck on the way in. So those things made a material difference. It's probably a webinar in itself, actually, but that probably gives a good flavor between myself and Steve.
Right, a suggestion. As I said at the beginning of this, I want suggestions for topics. So thanks for that one. And please, everybody else, please get your suggestions into us, either via chat or get in touch with Steve or myself through the IRT webpage itself. Next question, I'm going to go to Australia if David is there. David Nolan, Australia, he's asked, this is a bit more to the UK, so this is to you, Tom. Does the UK operate a carbon credit scheme? Is there any evidence of auto recyclers being able to obtain carbon credits in recognition of the CO2 savings they achieve? So,
yeah, is the short answer to that, David. Not yet. We didn't align our strategy to that, but I suspect it will happen. And even if it doesn't happen, very briefly, my belief is there will be a green premium, because as legislation dictates, more and more recycled content will need to be in batteries, in motors, in electric vehicles, in plastics, in metals. That at some point, the economics may start to make brilliant sense, because OEs will have a fine if they don't. So there'll be a cost which they can offset, and I think that will create a green premium. And I think we'll see that. I think we're already starting to see it, but I think we'll see that really amplify in the world of battery minerals, is my personal view. So no, there isn't, but there will be other forces, legislative, that impact on creating, I perceive, a premium for recycled and reused material.
And Steve, what do you think is the future for carbon credits?
Yeah, we've got carbon credits in Canada. They're quite controversial. And we've spoken to some people, and there's just that overriding question of who actually earns the carbon credit. Is it the person who recovers the part? Is it the person who reuses the part? It's probably a little bit of everything involved in there. So we've been talking to some people who design these systems just to make sure that we're on top of things. But right now, it just I think we're more on the approach that Tom alluded to, that you're going to sell more parts by tapping into the requirement for other people in our ecosystems to demonstrate more material usage or demonstrate more part usage.
Okay, great. I'm going right down to the bottom here for the next question, because it's just a quick question to Tom from Jeff. Tom, do you have a link on that widely publicly available OEM data?
If you want to share my details, I won't have it to hand, but we did use it. Yeah, it's a whole heap of data tables that we set our performance against. So yeah, if you want to connect me to Jeff, I'll take that one away.
I'll send emails and just put your details, and then you can get in touch with one another. So that's just a quick question there. I'm going to go to Spain now. I think it's Spain. Raphael. Hi, Raphael. How are you? Good beard. I think you've got the best beard in the industry. I really do, if anyone can see Raphael at the same time. This is also SYNETIQ, but I'm sure Steve can pick up on this. How does SYNETIQ treat critical EV batteries? So we're talking about EVs here. Ferrolytic with brakes, internal leaks, or broken chests. So how are you dealing with this? And I know this is something that you are looking at, Tom.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm touching wood. The vast majority of the batteries we've seen, and we've got about 1,000 in stock, and lots of really exciting partnerships around repair, reuse, recycle to ship these in good volume. We've had very few that we've seen as dangerous, and again, touch wood, no thermal runaway. Partly because I think we isolate those at source, so our colleagues are trained level 3 standard, so everything is done sort of safety first, safety last. So when we're storing batteries, it's fire suppression, contain units with fire suppression heat sensors away from everywhere else. This is for the batteries, but we actually leave batteries on car if we've checked them and disconnected them and made them safe. So I can't answer the question specifically with brakes, internal leaks, because we've not actually had any. However, we have got a safe system of work should we, and generally that's containment. The batteries are completely contained and separated away from the rest of the yard.
Okay, would you like to give some sort of perspective from the Canadian side, Steve?
Well, yeah, same issues and concerns. We just don't have Tom's scale. So when we probably have the similar 1,000 batteries, but spread out across 300 members. So nobody's got so many, but how do you store batteries to retain their value? How do you store batteries to not endanger your employees and your infrastructure? Are all issues that we're still working through directly with the OEMs, directly with fire, directly with a lot of training people, just to better understand it. But we're sort of far enough removed from an accidented vehicle that time solves some problems. But we're definitely, with Tom's, involvement on the actual auction side, where you're much closer to the accident, definitely following along, and we're having those conversations with IAA here just about what they're doing, and so that we can share information. Because ultimately, we need to demonstrate to the public that end-of-life EVs, although challenging, are something that auto recyclers are built for. And yes, we need to adapt. Yes, we need to understand. But that's the history of auto recycling, is adapting to what other people build and figuring out how to do it profitably.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think I'm very aware of time, so I'm going to ask the last question. I think I have noticed in the chat someone has asked what were the dates for Liverpool again. So you're right, Jeff. June the 3rd to 6th, 2025. We confirmed that this morning. So keep an eye out for that as we build that up. If people do want to get involved with that, partake, not only just be part of it, but if you want to speak at it as well, please get in touch about that, and we'll start putting that agenda of speakers as we sort of formulate this thing in Liverpool. This conference, sorry, it's sort of growing at the moment. So that's great. So look, I think what we need to do is, as a final question, is where as an industry, vehicle recyclers, when it comes to sustainability, where are we going to be going with this? Where are we going to go in 5 years' time? You know, we're leading the charge. That's what we call this title. So for both of you, what needs to be done? What would you like to be seen to be doing? And also, how do we work together to achieve this? So Steve, I think we'll start with you. Steve.
Yeah, auto recycling's been circular forever. It's almost the definition of auto recycling. So in a way, society is kind of catching up to us and figuring out that we're probably one of the best circular models in the world, and that's got a lot of sustainability aspects to it all. Definitely two words that I took out of Tom's presentation were collaboration and partnerships. You know, we can't do this alone, and we need to kind of work with other people on it all. So a lot of what I think we need to do is quantification of what you're already doing. And there are some minimum things that you really should be doing in order to be a responsible participant in the industry. But just understanding that you need to document, source what you're doing, because that's the baseline that you need to kind of grow from and work towards. One of the things that we've seen with this IRT is that industries outside of traditional auto recycling are paying attention to what we're doing. So we have a lot of OEM, scrap, insurance, consultancies, all sorts of different people are signing up for these webinars. So I think it's sort of incumbent upon us to just kind of keep that dialogue, communication, professionalization moving forward, because there are a lot of other serious industries who want to know what we're doing and want to make sure that we are doing the right thing. So those are some of the my reflections. You know, again, it's just the whole collaboration and partnership side of things is really, really important.
No, thanks.
Totally agree, Steve. And I'll be succinct, but again, there's possibly another webinar in what does the next 5 years look like, actually, if you're looking for subjects. So what's the view? I think in 5 years' time, we'll see the first zero carbon, within 5 years, the first zero carbon car, and that'll be embedded carbon in the production of that vehicle, as well as its carbon footprint, i.e. the emissions it will create, i.e. zero, in its life, because it'll be EV and it'll be fueled by renewable energy, and it will be made from remanufactured, principally reused or recycled materials. So that kind of leads me to, I suppose, where I come from. Within 5 years, I see vehicle recyclers as the connected partner to an OE as part of the urban mine, as a collection, storage, grading, quality control provider of input materials, not just recycled materials, but actually of reused and remanufactured materials. So I think it's a bigger, better understood, better connected role than it currently is, as a result of the things we've talked about today: consumer sentiment, investor sentiment, cost of capital, fines, taxes, carbon, very much about the embedded carbon of creation of new vehicles. And I do think we genuinely will see new cars being made from old cars, not just in terms of materials, but in terms of components, because it's completely ridiculous that something could have a 15, 20, 50, 100-year life and has a 6 or 8 or 12-year life and then gets remade into something else. The conversations I'm having personally as part of my role at SYNETIQ with a couple of OEs give me real confidence to be able to make that statement, because they're looking at OEs and looking at whole life, not just sell and forget model. They're looking at trying to monetize the whole lifetime of that car rather than just the sales process, because they know their model needs to change with mobility as a service and all that kind of stuff. So without repeating anything I've just said, I think it's bigger, it's better understood, and it's more connected, but it is a true partner, because we talk cradle to grave, we need to talk cradle to cradle. And to do that, you have to have really trusted, data connected, or potentially joint venture, mutual ownership supply chains, that if OEX needs that grade of plastic for their car, where better to get that from than their own cars? Who can provide them with that? it's people like us, provided we have that quality control, that process assurance, that provenance upstream and downstream. And as I say, the conversations that we're having, we're testing some of those things at quite a small scale at the moment with OEs that are really dipping into that cradle to cradle circularity.
Thanks, Tom. That's right. It seems as if we are leading the charge. We are talking to people. We're taking our responsibility, and it's going to be some exciting times ahead for everybody. Maybe for the 5-10 years, I think sustainability will just grow and grow as we understand it more and more. Once we understand it, then we start looking at solutions and how it fits into the circular economy. And as you just said, from cradle to cradle. Maybe this is the new phrase we'll start using: cradle to cradle instead of cradle to grave. So look, Tom, Steve, thanks very, very much. I know today we've spoken about Canada and the UK, but like I said, I know lots of people are getting very involved with sustainability within their own countries. And look, we are more than happy at Auto Recycling World for you to get in touch with us, and we can do some editorials so we can spread the word and let people know what is happening around the world about when it comes to vehicle recycling. Just not in sustainability, but in the whole part of what vehicle recycling is about. As I say to everybody, you guys make the news. We just make sure everybody knows about it. It's as simple as that. So thanks very, very much. I've just got some notes. Have I checked everything? Yeah. So I think we've come to an end. Thank you very much, especially to Steve and Tom, but everyone who's taken the time out, whatever time it is in the world, to join us today. Keep an eye out for our next IRT webinar. Please bring those suggestions. It does help us. And let's see the IRT grow and become this sort of global forum to promote vehicle recycling and all the sectors that are involved in it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Haydn. Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.